What a teacher writes on the blackboard of life can never be erased. This author is in them. Never can you take some of the life lessons you teach students away, and this is part of the reason I want to teach, and I'm sure many of us all want to teach. I've always known that I wanted to be a teacher. The problem that stood in my way was which school I should get my English degree with. It took me attending 3 different schools my freshman and sophomore years of college to realize that UMHB was the place for me. I now suffer with these effects of changing schools as I now have to request transcripts from 4 different schools. However, I think changing schools a few times really caused me to appreciate UMHB's English and Education Department particularly. In the first week of student teaching, it finally sank in that the days of going to school in Nike shorts with breakfast in hand, breaks in between classes, and hopes that maybe possibly class would be canceled for the day were now gone. It was now that I realized the job began from here. My first assignment, I was at South Belton Middle School with the 8th grade English class. This school is incredible. South Belton just opened up this year, and it is a technology school. You walk into the school with TV updating you on the events in the school. You walk through the hallways, which are lined with huge open windows that lead you to see into every classroom from the hallway. And some of the walls are actually covered with whiteboards where students fill it up with post signs and leave messages. But the best part about this school is that every student here has an iPad. This technology that is at a teacher's fingertips is earth-shattering. I taught a lesson on Martin Luther King Jr.'s I Have a Dream speech by projecting the YouTube video on the board so students could see and listen while telling them to open up a certain website to their iPads to gain access to the speech. And they followed along and took notes in the margins. The result of this, they incorporated sight, touch, and sound, and it created enormous engagement amongst the students. However, one of the challenges about this school is there's many moments of watching students with their iPads driving the latest Need for Speed game. So when you see them in the back and they're driving, you know this is one of the challenges you have with a technology school. However, you do have those moments where you just look at them and you can do all these engaging things, and never did I think that I could experience something like that while student teaching. At South Belton, I was introduced to a world where cooperation was key in a classroom with this technology. Like I said, it led to something more than I ever dreamed of learning about while student teaching. Compared to my next assignment, 8th grade proved to be more demanding. However, it was something refreshing about how malleable they were. They still were so young that they wanted to hear what you wanted to say. My next assignment brought me to Belton High School with an 11th grade American Lit class. Going from a school with ample amounts of technology to one that did not have quite as much, surprisingly, did not cause as much of a rift as I would have thought. You really do work and utilize whatever you have. This 11th grade classroom was on a whole different level than 8th grade, as the students stood taller than I and viewed me as perhaps just another student. I found I had to take on these students in a different way than 8th grade, and they were not quite as accepting of me as the 8th grade students were. It took proving myself and really engaging students with the whole class discussions for them to get used to me. We read the novel, Their Eyes Were Watching God. Of course I enjoyed the novel, but the challenge every day for me was thinking, how can I make this interesting to the students? Asking myself, how can I relate this novel to the students' lives? What would they find fascinating about it? I had to constantly place myself back into the high school days of what it feels like to be a student in high school. If I had to identify the 3 most important lessons that I found while student teaching, it would be the following, and I'm sure my fellow classmates could probably agree on these 3. Number 1 is flexibility. A lot of us took place since it's spring during tax testing. So we saw it at its finest, where I know many days my class was displaced and we had to go to a different classroom, and you had to be flexible. You had to get up and move your books, take it all the way down the opposite end of the school and just teach. And if you made it flexible and you were comfortable, then the students felt that as well. So if you're flexible, it really had a big effect on the students. Number 2, cooperation. Not only do students benefit from cooperative groups, as I saw in South Belton, but teachers do as well. All those times when we were in our education courses where we had to get into groups, that was really beneficial because we with teachers when we're planning. There's a lot of teamwork that had to be done. Number 3, personalities. This is something that can't always be taught when we're in our education classrooms because we don't have students to work with. But when you actually apply the personalities of the students from the classroom, you realize what should work does not always happen. Realizing that when you apply these lessons, you have to apply them to each individual student who have a range of personalities, and that can be challenging at times. The personalities actually cause the lesson, though, to come to life. And it's hard to see within the 4 walls of the classroom, so that's what's so beneficial about student teaching to apply it. Overall, my student teaching experience would definitely be categorized as a road in which there are twists and turns and a few bumps, maybe a couple potholes on some days. But coming out of it now, I can really reflect on how much I learned in such a short amount of time. I can honestly say, and I'm sure everyone can honestly say, that we were really fully equipped and supported from our UMHB faculty, mentor teachers, and supervising teachers in order to make student teaching experience so beneficial and memorable. We're all excited and prepared to venture into our new teaching positions and to write on our own blackboards of life that hopefully we will impact a number of students in the future. Thank you so much.